Welcome back. I have the Beginnings Treatment Centers with me, and we have Tom Nemat and Joe Milligan, who are going to talk to us a little bit about some estate planning and some other things that you have to take into consideration. Welcome, both of you.
Very nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So let's start with you, Joe. Tell me a little bit about the treatment centers and what they provide.
Well, Beginnings Treatment Centers is a comprehensive dual diagnosis addiction treatment center here in Orange County.
Okay.
We have all levels of care from detox through outpatient, and we deal with a complex mix of addiction and mental health issues within our treatment centers.
Okay.
And we've been doing this for quite some time. Tom is my business partner. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with the company.
Okay.
Tom is our CEO, and Tom is by his trade an estate planning attorney.
Okay.
And we've talked quite a bit about the, I was on here before with Ken, and we talked a bit about the addiction crisis, the addiction, opioid addiction epidemic that's going on in this country right now.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about that.
Yes.
But I wanted to come here today with Tom to talk about something that's been somewhat overlooked. And that's in, when somebody comes to us, when a family of means has somebody suffering from the disease of addiction, and it is a catastrophic and deadly and painful disease by any measure. They don't come to us first. They go to their professionals. They go to their lawyers, their doctors. They find out, what can we do about this? And one of the things that's come up with us is how to responsibly care for and help your loved one while protecting the family finances. We've worked hard for what we have, and we don't want Johnny to, just lose it all.
Right, right. Well, that's a really good point, because when you, like you said, if they're using drugs, then they're probably not being responsible.
Right.
So how do they get protected? So that's a really good point.
Right. So we'll go over some of the details of methods and strategies that the families can use and how they can be proactive regarding this issue.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So family planning, what are some of the things that the loved ones can do?
So my experience as an estate planning attorney, I've been practicing for over 10 years now.
Okay.
And one of the items in our questionnaire we always ask is there a substance abuse or a mental health issue with one of the beneficiaries?
Okay.
And the reason that's an important question is because it affects the planning. In general, people don't want to make their planning too complex. So in estate planning, we choose a trustee who will step in when we're no longer here to administer our trust and make sure that our children receive the assets that we've worked hard to earn. But what happens when there's an addiction or a mental health issue where you know that this beneficiary is vulnerable and that they might not be making the right decisions? So there's a few action steps that we recommend with the clients that we meet. And this is outside of the treatment center. So this would be in my private practice, where we would advise the families regarding what are some of these action steps. Now, as far as the treatment center, that's where we actually do the treatment. So if we have clients who are referred to us by other estate planning attorneys or whoever else refers them to us, then our team is aware that they have to talk with the family and they have to get the families involved, because the family planning from a treatment side is also very important. If you just treat the client and they go back home to a faulty environment, then they're not going to succeed.
I see.
So I will go over a few items that I think would be beneficial for the families to consider in order to enhance and increase the probability of success for their children in treatment, whether they're here and they're alive, or even in the event that they pass away, and they want to make sure that the person that's the trustee and handling their estate has the roadmap within the trust and the estate planning documents to make sure that that happens.
Okay, so when you first started to talk, I thought you were actually going to be talking about the individual that was coming for treatment, that they were the ones that needed the planning, but you're actually referring to the beneficiaries, that there could be some they might have the addiction. So how do you actually address the family with that kind of concern?
Well, it's not so much about the family having the addiction. It's about the family wanting to help and wanting to protect their future and the future of the other members of the family.
Gotcha.
From the obvious and devastating financial consequences of addiction.
Okay, got it. All right, good.
And to go over a few action steps, if we want to go over, the existing state of estate planning, and there's estate planning is a specialized field where it's not something where every lawyer can do, right? So the lawyers who practice within Orange County, right now we're in Orange County, so we can focus on that. Most of them are very well experienced and very knowledgeable, but I don't know how many would also be in a position where they're running a treatment center, they have experience within a treatment center component. So what I've been able to do is essentially combine these two different areas where you would normally think, why would an estate planning attorney have to do in the addiction field, or why would somebody in the addiction field have to do anything with estate planning?
Right.
I've had the experience on both sides. So, I've worked with our clinical team, and I've worked with our, kind of interventionists who work with the families, and I've understood the pain there. So it hasn't been just a meeting with a client who and distanced from the actual situation. And I've had that meeting as well, where you're just sitting right there with the family members, and they don't want to talk about all the pain when they're in the estate planning meeting, but you still have to kind of probe those questions. And what I've suggested to them is, there's 2 or 3 really fundamental issues that affect somebody's recovery, and one of them is this idea of leverage. And in leverage, there's a pilots program where people who are pilots or people who are airline attendants have had a very, very high success rate. I believe over 80 or 90% success rate in recovery, and that's because they have a license to keep, and that's essentially their livelihood. And because of that, and because of the way that program's designed, with monitoring, with a compliance standard, with a lot of third-party intervention tools, that's been a very successful program. So then we thought, well, how do you apply that to a normal situation? And it's very difficult to do with just an average client, right? Let's say, a 25-year-old who, let's say, was doing well in school, but then they faced some hard times, they fell into addiction, and they don't have any really incentive other than just staying sober. And I know that would seem like incentive enough, but a lot of times it isn't. How do you put planning together to create that leverage? And one recommendation we have is for the trust, for the individual, the family member, to put language in their trust where the trustee who takes over from them has the ability to do a few things. One is to have a team of interventionists, a clinical team, psychologists or psychiatrists, who will then kind of step in as a buffer between that trustee and that beneficiary. Because what you don't want the trustee to be the bad guy, right? You don't want to create a problem between the person who's supposed to be distributing the funds and also providing care. So you want to create that buffer and have a team in place. That's one strategy. And there's a few other things if you'd want to. I can explain.
Well, I would love to, but we don't have a lot of time. But
just 2 quick ones.
Go ahead.
And the other one is creating a roadmap within the trust documents of testing and treatment episodes and things where there's a beneficiary distributions that are tied to what we call spendthrift and discretionary provisions. So those discretionary provisions will enable that trustee to withhold making those distributions until they have a certain amount of time sober, until they have certain monitoring standards, and that way they can ensure that there's an enhanced chance of recovery.
All right. Well, very good.
And this is not an insignificant issue. Tom and I went and spoke to a group of estate planning professionals up in Sacramento a few months ago, just to bring this up. And we asked, is this affecting your practice? And how many raised their hands? 90%? Almost all of them. This is something that's going on, and people really aren't talking about it because this is not something you talk about at the PTA or at the country club. But it does come up. And we can provide a resource for other estate planning professionals that they may not have. A way to deal with these things in their practices, because it is happening in their practices. We'd like them to know that.
Well, excellent. Now, so if someone wants information, we have a phone number for them to be able to call regarding this or your treatment center. Be 888-381-6994, or they can email you at info@beginningstreatment.com or go to your website, beginningstreatment.com.
Yes.
Right? Well, thank you so much for both of you being
nice
on.
To meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
All right. And don't forget that if you need any information, don't forget to call that number or go to beginningstreatment.com. We'll be right back after this.